Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is injure. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you are likely to hear the verb injure used is to mean to do or suffer physical harm or damage. So this first definition is really referencing people, right? So we can use this verb to talk about if we're causing physical harm or damage to another, or if someone has caused physical harm or damage to us. A second and similar way we can use the verb injure is to refer to harming something, right? So again, might also think about damaging something. A third way you might hear the verb injure used is to mean to do wrong to someone. So here, this isn't going to refer to a physical malady, right? Doesn't mean someone has been cut or hit, but maybe more emotionally they are harmed or hurt. This could also maybe be even financially harmed or hurt. You should know that injure is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of the verb, we're going to drop the E and then add ing to form injuring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb end in ed. Our base verb already has an E there, and so we're not going to have two E's. That's very common in English. Our base verb, though, injure, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound, and we're not adding an extra syllable as we say it. So it should sound like this: injured, injured. Okay. Now, I don't have any additional phrasal verbs that we need to learn today, so that's going to allow us to focus on looking at how to use the verb injure in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the simple present and the simple future using be going to. Let's talk about the simple present. We're using this verb tense to talk about habits or routines. We might also use it to discuss facts. And the thing we have to pay attention to in the simple present is our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use that base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to the end of the verb. And you can see that in my affirmative example. She always injures herself on the playground. So maybe we're talking about a little child who frequently falls down, hurts herself. Now, if you want to make a negative simple present sentence, your structure is again going to depend on what your subject is. If your subject is I, you, we, or they, we'll use do, not, and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, we're going to use does not and then the base verb. So notice we're not adding an S to the end of the verb in the negative. Here's another example sentence. Vaccines don't injure the vast majority of people. We know there's a lot of misinformation out there about vaccines. It's made some people scared to get them, but there is an abundance of research that they are not causing harm or damage. Next, let's look at making a yes or no question. To do this, again, we're going to start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject. The subject comes next. And then we're going to use the base verb. Again, I'm not using the form of the verb with an S in my yes or no questions. Here's another example. Do drunk drivers injure passengers and other motorists? Right? And again, we have evidence, research that yes, when you're driving impaired, you can hurt people who are riding in your car or other drivers on the road. Now let's take a look at the simple future using be going to. And again, with this verb tense, we are going to pay attention to what our subject is. So if our subject is I, our form of be will be am. If our subject is you, we, or they, our form of be is are, A-R-E. And then if our subject is he, she, or it, our form of be is, I-S. Okay, so once we know that, then the structure stays the same. So we're going to use a present form of be, then going to, and the base verb. Here is an affirmative example. COVID-19 is going to injure many more people than it kills. This is a future sentence, likely making a prediction. And this is something that many doctors have noticed or concluded after many months of analyzing and seeing how people recover from having COVID-19. You might have heard of people having long COVID so that their symptoms continue beyond just that 1 or 2 week period of time. And so that's how the doctors are making this conclusion, right? They're going to be suffering this physical harm in greater numbers than those that have unfortunately died as a result. If you want to make a negative simple future sentence, again, we need a present form of be, then we're going to use not, then going to, and our base verb. Here's another example sentence. These products aren't going to injure or kill anyone. So again, someone might be using this form to make a bit of a promise or prediction, and that's why they're using the future here. Lastly, let's look at making a yes or no question. To do this, we're going to start with a present form of be, whichever form matches our subject, and the subject comes next, then going to, and our base verb. Here's another example. Are additional variants going to injure the economy? Right? So this would tie back to that second definition, harming something, right? Because we're not talking about a person in this case. Now let's take a moment to look at some words and phrases related to our verb injure. And the first word we're going to look at is the noun injury. This can have a couple different meanings. The first is an instance or a fact of being injured. So an example of this might be, did he suffer any injuries in the accident? Right? So did he suffer any physical harms? A second way we can use the noun injury is very much connected to the legal field or the profession of law. So when it's used in this sort of area, we're referring to a violation of someone's rights. And that violation is generally going to allow them to sue someone to recover damages. So an example of this, maybe a judge or another attorney asks someone, what was your client's injury? Right? So what rights were violated? Another phrase you might hear is a bit of an idiom. It's describing someone as being injury prone. So this means we're talking about someone who is frequently injured. An example of this in a sentence might be, he may be a great player, but he's too injury prone to consistently contribute. Right? So maybe there are commentators on TV talking about different players and their skills, and they might have this conclusion. So this person or this athlete is injured too frequently in order to be consistently good and help his team. The last phrase we're going to look at here is to do oneself an injury. So again, ties back to sort of the first definition of the verb we looked at earlier in the video, but we're really talking about suffering harm or damage. So in my phrase here, oneself, it's generally going to be replaced with a reflexive verb, a reflexive pronoun. And you can see that in my example sentence here. Isn't it a wonder we didn't do ourselves an injury? Right? So maybe someone is talking about a particular event or incident and reflecting on it, going, wow, how didn't we hurt ourselves? How didn't we harm ourselves? So ourselves is the reflexive pronoun. It ties back, it matches we. So that's what you want to pay attention to. So kind of matching the subject to the right form of the reflexive pronoun. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.